You know, what jumps out at me when I read Acts chapter 20, just the first paragraph there, it's verses 1 through 6, it really stands out. It doesn't give a lot of action, like it doesn't tell us that they're not planting a new church, there's no riot breaking out or whatever. It's after the riot, after the uproar ceased, verse 1. It's basically a list of people and places that Paul goes to next. And I want to read this to you and then talk to you about it because it really jumps out at me just how many places Paul at this point has planted churches and how many people he has with him from these churches. That this early church movement was a missionary movement. That's what it was. And it's powerful. Let's read it. Okay, after the uproar ceased, Paul sent for the disciples, and after encouraging them, he said farewell and departed for Macedonia. Macedonia, remember, chapter 16, he goes to Philippi. Chapter 17, he goes to Thessalonica and Berea, three main cities in Macedonia that the book of Acts describes, okay? So he said farewell from Ephesus, big riot in chapter 19, remember we looked at yesterday. He leaves Ephesus, that's in modern-day Turkey, in Asia Minor. There's a land route and there's a sea route. Either way you get there. Sometimes when he goes back and forth, it tells you how he does it. This time it looks like he's setting sail. And so he sent for the disciples, that's the Christians in Ephesus. After encouraging them, he said farewell and departed from Macedonia. When he had gone through these regions and given them much encouragement, he came to Greece. Greece is Athens. Greece, the Achaia region of Greece, is Centuria and Corinth. He spent a long time in Corinth. There he spent 3 months, and when a plot was made against him by the Jews, he was about to set sail for Syria. He decided to return through Macedonia. So he's going to take the land route back. Sopater the Berean, Berea is in Macedonia, the son of Pyrrhus, accompanied him, and of the Thessalonians, that's in Macedonia, Aristarchus and Secundus and Gaius of Derbe, different place, and Timothy he picked up in I forget where he picked up Timothy. Maybe it was Derbe. And of the Asians, Tychicus and Trophimus. These went on ahead and were waiting for us at Troas. Troas is a region in the far northwestern end of Turkey. Modern-day Turkey. They would have called it Asia. But we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and in 5 days we came to them at Troas, where we stayed 7 days. All right, so don't get mixed up. Like, there's a lot of locations, and maybe you don't have a map built into your head of the ancient Mediterranean world. That's fine, okay? Just suffice to say, he is going back and forth from several different places, and places that he has already planted churches and ministered to. Greece and Macedonia being the main regions. With this, he's coming from Asia, Ephesus being in Asia Minor, Turkey. And he's got people from all over the place, okay? Sopater the Berean, the son of Pyrrhus. From the Thessalonians, there's Aristarchus and Secundus. There's Gaius of Derbe and Timothy. And there's Asians, Tychicus and Trophimus. Okay, we don't know a lot about these guys. Timothy we know a little bit about because, there's 2 letters written to Timothy. He follows Paul in a lot of his journeys. But it's just this list of people from all over, from Berea, from Thessalonica, from Derbe, from Asia. And that's amazing to me because these are churches that, especially Thessalonica, like he wasn't there long. He was there very short periods of time at some of these places. And even if you go to think of Corinth, where he was there for like a year and a half, or Ephesus, which is 2 years, that's a really short period of time to plant a church from scratch. From you're the only Christian in town and you're new to town and you're a traveling missionary and you're the only one in town, to now we have a healthy church. Even if you say with Ephesus where he was 2 years. Man, we planted this church in York Springs. We're coming up to 6 years. And I always think of us as like a new church, a young church. We're still immature. We still have a lot of growing to do. We have a lot of things we need to set straight. And some of that is maybe, I don't know, maybe just wrong. Just kind of making excuses for why things aren't the way I want them to be. Well, we're still young or something. I don't know. We're doing great. Like I don't say this in a bad way or anything. I feel very happy with where our church is and growing and doing the right sorts of things. So I don't mean it in like a criticism or whatever. But just imagine. And we started this church. We had a team of 30 people come from Gettysburg Foursquare, and we started it here. And we very quickly picked up other believers who were already believers. And we've also seen, of course, a fair number of non-believers come to Christ through the past 6 years. But what we have done isn't comparable to what's happening in Acts. They're going to Ephesus, a pagan city where they have a huge shrine to this false god Artemis, and so many converts are happening that the whole industry of this false god is under attack. It is not attack, like the whole industry is going out of business because so many people are becoming believers. And even still, it's only a 2-year-old church, and Paul's like, all right, I'm going to go. And not only does he go, but he brings missionaries with him. These churches that are so young, so what I might be tempted to think of as immature or whatever, are sending missionaries. They're sending them out directly. They're not sponsoring missionaries from other places. They're sending them. Thessalonica, okay, at the Thessalonians, there's Aristarchus and Secundus coming from Thessalonica. That place, he was barely even there before they kicked him out. And that church is mature enough that 2 missionaries are coming out from there to travel with Paul. It's amazing. And all over the place, okay? Sopater the Berean, the Aristarchus and Secundus, Gaius of Derbe, Timothy, the Asians, Tychicus and Trophimus. Man, does your heart beat for starting new churches, for planting movements, for reaching people with the gospel who don't know it? Do you have a Paul in your life, somebody that you follow around just to see how he grows in the Lord and how he spreads the gospel, so that you might one day do the same? Or are you eager for this? Is your church eager for it? I feel like there's such a temptation to okay, cool, we got something together here. Let's just hold tight. Let's make sure we don't, let's polish everything up. Let's smooth everything out. Let's get really good at what we're doing here. And I don't see that in Acts. I see them saying, let's always be spreading. Let's always be pushing ahead. And Paul will go back and he'll write letters back and he'll revisit them, as we just see him doing here in chapter 20. He goes back to Thessalonica and back to Philippi, but not for long. These are brief things. It'll say he's there for 5 days, or 7 days later he set sail for this or that. He stops by to visit. He's not. You can't fix major problems in a 5-day, 1 week window or something. He's counting on these churches to be building their own things and to be fixing their own problems and to be ready to send missionaries when he stops by. Probably without warning. They didn't have email and phone calls and stuff back then that you could call ahead and to let people know you're on your way. They were like, oh, wow, cool. There's a missionary here. Maybe we can send some people with him to be missionaries, to learn how to do this, and to maybe we can have some missionaries from our church. Have you ever thought about being a missionary? Have you ever thought about just moving? Just leaving your hometown, leaving your church to start a new one? To reach people who are unreached? Have you ever thought about it? You know what? I think churches, and I'll say this for my own, I'll speak for myself here. I think churches will never fully mature until they have to. You don't have to, get everything running smoothly if your plan is to just kind of be there forever. You can just always be improving or whatever, and we should be, of course. But if your best people are constantly leaving to start new churches, not leaving because they got mad at you or whatever nonsense people do, but your best people are always planning to develop up and lead a new church somewhere else or be missionaries somewhere else, that forces you to be developing people at all times. because you're losing your best people. So it forces you to get on the ball with what matters, and it forces you, your people who are on the sidelines, the unengaged people, it forces them to make that decision to step in, because hey, the Sunday school teacher just moved to start a new church. The VBS director just moved and became a missionary to some crazy place, whatever. The worship leader just moved. And the next one will probably only be here a year or two before they move. So there's this expectation that I better be on a discipleship journey here, because there's an expectation that I'm supposed to be leading. I'm supposed to be taking charge. I'm supposed to be starting ministries, leading ministries, starting new churches, moving to who knows where, expanding the gospel. If that's built in, if that's the expectation, then you'll have a lot less complaining about which chair you get, so-and-so sits in, and whether you like this particular worship song or that one, or how the program went and did it go smoothly. Man, the expectation, does anything go smoothly here in Acts? Does he ever just start a church and everything goes great? And no, there's riots, there's violence. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and they're not trying to go smoothly. They're trying to go. They're trying to move the gospel ahead. And I think we can build up this false god of security, of stability, of organization, as though these things are the chief aims of the church, and they are not. The chief aim of the church is to multiply, is to spread the message of the gospel. And I believe in being organized. I believe in polishing things and doing a good job. I believe in all that stuff. But man, I have found that when you are actively doing stuff, you just have to go out and do it. And you worry about the details, and you get better with time. And when something goes wrong, it's a learning experience. You build on it, and you do it better next week or tomorrow or whatever. But if you don't start something, you'll never complete anything. If you don't start something a little bit dirty, you'll never have anything running well. The best way to smooth something out is to start rough and find where the rough patches are and find how to fix them. And the best way to do that is to have people who are eager for the mission. And you get eager for the mission, you'll deal with the roadblocks, you'll deal with the rough patches, you'll deal with the issues like that come along, and you'll figure out which ones matter, and you'll smooth those over, and which ones don't matter, you'll just count it as a little bit of suffering for Christ, and it won't stop you, it won't change things. But I believe if our church, if your church, wherever you happen to attend, if you personally were so set on spreading the news of the gospel that you weren't worried about all these other sorts of things, I think churches would really begin to grow the right kind of way, and not grow because they run a perfect program. The hour-and-a-half service starts on time, ends on time, 30 minutes of worship, 10 minutes of announcements, whatever's left for the sermon. I'm not good at adding it up, but who cares about running a smooth service? Who cares about running programs that do everything exactly right? If that is the chief goal of your ministry, of your church, of your just personal life and preferences and stuff, then you've created a false god, and we need to be moving. We need to be sending missionaries. And sure, Thessalonica has some problems. Paul had to write them 2 different letters to tell them different things. He had all kinds of issues with these different situations. There were riots, there were threatening, there was persecution, and they're still sending people out of their church. I assume some of their best people. Paul's not a sort of missionary who takes along slackers. Remember when he had John Mark with him, and Barnabas was like, let's bring John Mark. He's like, no, that guy's a slacker. Paul didn't take they weren't sending their get this guy out of this church. We don't want him here anymore. Maybe he'll go with Paul. Paul didn't take that kind of missionary with him. He took their best ones. And not selfishly. He took them and would develop them and send them back with a greater understanding of spreading the gospel. And their churches grew as a result of these things. You develop your best people. You move your best people on ahead. So guys, I don't know I don't know personally who you are specifically watching, but I know this. I know that God wants to move you. I know that what you have found comfort in, he probably wants to flip that upside down. Paul, the Christian life, when I read it in the book of Acts, is not based around comfort. It's basically the opposite of that. It is not based on what comes easily. It's not based on stability and everything functioning smoothly. It's based on the opposite of that. It's based on moving ahead, traveling, moving, taking your best people and sending them away. And hopefully we develop new ones in their place, because that's our job, and we certainly ought to be. So God bless you. Your particular situation, I don't know exactly what it might be, but I know this, that God wants to move you on ahead. He wants the gospel to spread. So you're going to have to pray. You're going to have to get with the Lord and look into these things. But if you've never prayed about being a missionary, about starting a ministry, you don't need to move to somewhere in Asia or Africa or some crazy place to be a missionary, although somebody needs to do that. Somebody needs to do that. Maybe there's a ministry in your community that needs to be started that simply doesn't exist, and there's a blind spot in your community. And it's hard, and you don't know how to do it, and you feel like there's so many other things going on, and you don't know how you'll ever accomplish it. Just do it. Just do it. Seek the Lord on these things. Talk to me if you're in my church. Talk to your pastor, whatever. But there's things to do that are uncomfortable, that are hard, and that won't run smoothly on the first try. And you need to get over that and do them anyway. God bless you. Praise the Lord. We'll continue looking in chapter 20 here tomorrow, right at noon. We'll post these up. God bless you. See you then.